Everything seemed to be in place, but the number 2 man, Harry, needed a new broadcast partner.
I was in the Ambassador East Hotel. Harry lived at the Ambassador East, and I went down to the paper stand, and a bellhop said 2 papers for Mr. Caray, and I remembered that Harry stayed there. So I sent up my card, and Harry goes, "Where are you?" I said, "The Ambassador East." He said, "Don't go anywhere." He goes, "They're looking for a partner for me, and you're one of the names I gave them, so I'm going to have a guy give you a call." And Jim Dowdle called me in my room, and he said, "You want to come downtown and talk about the Cubs? Talk about perhaps broadcasting for them?" So I went downtown, we talked. He said, "If you're doing this as a passing fancy, it's not the job because we do 150 games. If you want to get better as a broadcaster and have Harry as a partner and learn how to broadcast, this would be the ideal job." And that's how I became the Chicago Cubs broadcaster. That's how I got to work 15 years with Harry. I wouldn't have traded it for the world. I think he grew up with a basic mistrust of just about everyone. And when you have that, it's difficult to make real close friends. Now, Harry had some friends, but it took a long time to gain his trust.
Harry! We want Harry!
That was Harry's team. He grew up in St. Louis. That was a team that he really loved. Did he ever get St. Louis entirely out of his blood? I don't think you ever get out of your blood the place where you're brought up and the first team you broadcast for. The Cubs are still riding the wave of what Harry brought to Chicago. And the move by Jim Dowdle and the Tribune Company to choose Harry as their #1 broadcaster, knowing that they had a bad product. And if you have a bad product, you get the best salesman in the world to sell it. And they got the best salesman in Harry Caray, and the rest, as they say, is history. It was, I think, in our second year. I was smoking a pipe occasionally, and occasionally I would smoke a cigar. And it was one day out of the clear blue when Harry, and I happened to have a cigar that day, started picking on the cigars. And he'd go, "How can a college-educated guy like yourself smoke those stinking, foul, terrible cigars? Well, did you spend 8 cents on that one? I mean, that's horrible." And that became a running gag between us. Finally, I went to him one time, and I said to him, "Do you really, does it really bother you that I'm smoking cigars in the booth?" Because he used to tell everybody how horrible this was. And he goes, "Steve, I've spent my life in smoke-filled bars. Do you think it bothers me outside with you smoking a cigar?" He goes, "That's one of the best bits we have. Go with it." I would say everything that Harry did was a carefully orchestrated professional broadcast. However, he did have some problems with names. Montreal had a relief pitcher by the name of Jeff Parrott. And Harry would say, "Harold Parrott coming in the game." And between innings, he'd say, "Why'd you call him Harold Parrott? His name is Jeff." He goes, "I had a friend named Harold Parrott years ago." And he was always then Harold Parrott. He could also never pronounce Grudzelanek. And eventually said, well, all of his teammates call him the G-Man. As far as I know, none of his teammates called him the G-Man. You might remember Delano DeShields. Well, Harry was broadcasting, and he just missed it by a little bit. I said, "There's Delano DeShields." And he called him Delano DeSanders. And I said, "No, that's Colonel DeSanders, but this is Delano DeShields. He's a second baseman." Harry was mercurial, and that's what made him so interesting. He was a living contradiction. One minute you wanted to strangle him, and the next minute you wanted to give him a kiss on the cheek. He was one of those guys that you could be friends with, and then the next moment you would say, "Oh my God, how could he possibly do that?"
You can't keep these big glasses on. Where's yours?
You're wearing it. I remember one time in the booth, we were just talking about something. I was trying to help him out, and he got infuriated that I would question his eyesight, which at the time wasn't particularly good.
There's a drive in a right center field, way back. Might be out of here. Could be.
Well, he took exception to it one day and was yelling at me, and he left. So he comes back in the booth. He puts his books down. I'm sitting there working on my stuff. He taps me on the shoulder. He goes, "Are you mad at me?" I said, "You're damn right I'm mad at you." He goes, "You can't be mad at me." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because you're my friend." Now, what do you do with that? And Harry got a phone call, and he said, "Harry." "Yes." "Is Harry Caray?" He says, "Yes, it is." "Who is this?" He says, "This is Elvis." Harry goes, "Elvis who?" He says, "Elvis who? What city are you in?" He says, "I'm in Memphis." He says, "And you have to ask Elvis who? How many Elvises you think are here?" He said, "I'll prove it to you. Go downstairs in 20 minutes. 20 minutes, he went downstairs. His big limousine pulls up, opens the door. Spent the evening with Elvis, about 3:30. Elvis figured out they hadn't eaten anything yet, and he said he never met a better looking and more likable young man than Elvis Presley. Harry came back to the booth after the stroke, And as was his style, he came back with a lot of fanfare because Harry knew and always told me, Steve, it's showbiz. So they told him the president was going to give him a call. He was telling us then about Nancy and her ties to Chicago. And just about the time he started talking about Nancy, Harry goes, Mr. President, I have to hang up. Bobby Dernier just got a bunt single. Looks like the Cubs have a rally. Boom. Phone went down. Might have been the only guy around that ever hung up on the president. Certainly he was the only guy that hung up on the president because Bobby Dernier got a bunt single. I think later on Harry figured it out because he spent a great deal of his life getting all the people in this country who really didn't know him to love him. And at the end, he realized that the thing to do is to have the people closest to you, your family, love you.